All right, this tutorial is going to be a quick introduction to Substance Painter. So here I have a column model. I have gone through, there's an unwrap UVW. If I click open UV editor, you could see if I come up here and turn off the active map, you can see that I've completely unwrapped my model. All right, now in order for a model to work inside of Substance Painter, if it only has one material, everything should be laid out completely unique. So let's just double check. I'm in Polygon down here, and I can do select overlap polygons. I see nothing overlapping, so this is going to work out just fine. I'm going to right click and say convert to edit poly. That makes that change permanent. All right, so I'm going to do something here. I'm going to go into element, and I'm just going to select everything and come over to Polygon Smoothing Group, say clear all, and assign them all one smoothing group. And then this is called column underscore LP. If you have it named at that, go ahead and name it that now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, or actually before I do that, I'm going to put another edit polygon here and say file, export selected, and I'm going to export to the same folder that the mesh is in. And I'm going to call it my initials underscore, oops, accidentally hit enter instead of some other button. Let's do export selected. So this will be BN under, there we go, column underscore LP. And I'm going to select FBX, Autodesk FBX file, and hit save. And then when all this export options come out, I'm going to do media and entertainment. If I open it up, you want to make sure that animation is turned off. If you go into geometry, you want to turn on smoothing groups. And then now it will say user defined, and you just click OK. And then every time you export moving forward, it will use those settings. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to clone this as a copy. But I'm going to change the name to column underscore HP and say OK. So let's go over here to our Scene Explorer, and I'm going to hide that low poly. And now I'm going to select, I'm going to select this mesh. I'm going to go into Element here, select everything, and say Auto Smooth. Now if I orbit around, it's got nice smoothing groups assigned to it. All right, this is going to be pretty good. And so now we're going to go ahead and just export this out. So we'll do File, Export Selected. Oops, I don't want to paste that path. I'm just going to take this name and just change the L to an H and say save. Say OK. All right, so now we are going to go ahead and load up Substance Painter, which I already have running here. So this is Adobe Substance 3D Painter. So I'm going to do File, New. So when you're working in Substance, up here there are templates. We're going to go ahead and use the Unreal 4. Right? That's kind of the preset that we're going to use. And I'm going to come to File and click Select, and then I need to navigate to the location where my models are. And I'm going to select the LP. So the model that you're going to be using that gets imported into every future piece of software is the low poly. The low poly is the real-time asset. That's what you want here. That's what you're going to bring into a game engine. So I'm going to click Open and then say OK. Now a lot of times students that are new to this will accidentally bring in their HP, their high poly version. And so what happens is here we're seeing our low poly. That's the 3D viewer. If you hold Alt and use your left mouse button, you can orbit around. Same if you use Alt and the left mouse button, you can rotate this. But if you just click in, oops, if you hold Alt, forget, something allows you to rotate in here, but I can't remember what. F will focus it though. But basically this viewport shows, this is very similar. You see how it has everything laid out like in your UV editor? That's exactly the same thing here, except for it's just has the material being displayed on it. So what we're going to do is we need to come over here. First off, you have a texture set list at the top. This should just have one material on it. If you have more than one material listed, you need to go back to 3ds Max and assign just one material to your entire model, right? Now, let's see, layers. We're going to go to texture set settings, and we need to set our size. We want our texture size to be 2048. And then we're going to come down, we're scroll down to bake mesh maps, and if I click on that, I can set my map size, which I want to be 2048. And then I'm going to come over here, and for high poly parameters, under high definition models, there's a little tab that you click on, and that allows you to select your high poly. So I click on that and say open, and I'm just going to click bake selected textures. And what this does is it goes through and creates a number of different image files based on the mesh data. And that's going to be used for us to texture our model. So you see how before it had no smoothing groups, but now we've gotten all that smoothing data from our high poly version, which in our case, there's the only thing different between the two is just the fact that it had smoothing groups on it. Right? So here we can orbit around and we can see this is what it looks like. Here's all that data, right? If you want to see how different light will change, I believe it's Shift and your right mouse button will rotate the lighting inside the scene. But now at this point, if I come over, you can see all the different maps that were rendered out, right? And it renders out all these. These are the important ones. Height, bent normals, opacity. There are ways to get those. I haven't done any work personally where I needed those in here. I handle those different ways. All right, let's go to layers. And so now in layers, we can apply a material to it, right? Like there's this aluminum. I'll just grab the very first material. This is aluminum insulator. And so you'll see properties at the bottom. If you want to tile that more, you can adjust the tiling frequency on it. I'm scrolling my middle mouse wheel to zoom in. So there you go. There's your like spaceship paneling. Let's just trash that. There's like fabric rough. Right, we want to have kind of a weird fabric version, but that's not really what we're looking for, right? We want something like a concrete, so let's bring that over. Right, so now we have a concrete material in our column, and again, if you want to, you can come down to the properties and you can adjust the tiling frequency on it. If you want to see how things sit differently, you can kind of shift that around. Right? You can also there's other options for how things are projected. Like right now, you may see a seam where your UV seam is. You could try doing triplanar projection, and that will project it based off of the 6 sides, which, as you can see, doesn't always work, right? That's not working right here. We don't really want that. So we'll go with this route. Okay. There's things that we can do to get around the seam. Like we could, I mean, at this point, if you just save this, we'll navigate to that location. We'll call this column, save it. We could save that there. We could even say, but here's what we'll do. Let's, I'm going to right click and say add a black mask. And I'm going to come in here, and over on the side there's different ways. Like I could paint a mask by just clicking and painting. The other option, the one we're going to do, goes a little quicker. If you click on this one, it's Polygon Select. And if you just region select, you can grab polygons and they will be masked to this now. So you see at this point, everything is masked except that center column. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to right click and duplicate this layer. And we're going to click on that mask and right click and say invert mask. And now I can select this material up here, which is only being applied, as you see, to the actual column itself. And I can change the projection to triplanar. So now everything else looks fine, right? We don't get the streaking on the other parts. And now the way that the texture is projected, we really don't get that distortion on the center part anymore. We do get a little bit of streaking up at the top, which is not good. We can maybe look at that. There may be settings. Maybe we reduce the dirt. No. All right. Well, yeah. There's other ways to handle that. Maybe we just need to choose a different material, right? Well, let's turn these off. And we could also, right now, if you hover, it'll give you names. This is materials. Next to that is smart materials, which are different material types that you can choose. If you click in here and hit F, that will fill screen with what you have selected. So we can come over here, we could choose a different one like this aluminum. All right. And remember, if you hold Shift and the right mouse button, it'll change that. There's this bronze with the bronze on it. These are smart materials, and so beyond the original ones, regular materials, these are actually a combination of materials and other things that are making them more complex. There's things like fill layers, and then the fill layers have masks, and there's different types of mask editors on them that utilize the surface of the model in order to create a more interesting result for you, right? And there's a lot of detail on this that you can find online. Algorithmic, who makes this software, has a lot of excellent tutorials for how it works. Let's see. But we would want something, so we are going to use these columns in our Roman ludus that we're going to make for our final project. So kind of keep that in mind as you're thinking about this, because you could find something that's a little bit more older stone, or even potentially like a marble that you could put on there even, right? Something like that might even work, okay? But you want to find something that you think looks pretty good. And once you do, again, save your project. And then the last thing is just going to File, Export Textures. And so our output template is Unreal Engine 4. And you just want to click up here, and you're going to navigate to the location of your column. Click Select, and then you're going to hit Export. All right, so let's save this. And now if I look in my Word document, or in my Explorer window here, I'm going to do extra large icons. Here's my files. We need to change the names of these. I'm going to hit F2 to go into rename. And I'm going to get rid of everything except the name of it, and I'm going to just break this down. This is the base color. I'm just going to call this BC for base color. I'm going to select this first part, navigate over, and this is what's called the normal, and you can see that name normal at the end. I'm just going to abbreviate that. Now by default, the software goes through and names it the name of the mesh, the name of the material, and then it spells out the name of the material, of the texture. I'm just going to rename this one ORM for occlusion, roughness, and metallic. All right, so what you have here is a full color map, a normal map, and a packed texture map. All right, and so the normal is that per pixel lighting information. The color is all the color data. And then the last one is a packed map. And this packed map contains different data per channel, red, green, and blue channels covered in there. We've talked about this before, but that's included inside there. So we want to rename those. And so what you're going to do is you're going to give me a snip of this, right? So we'll just jump in, and we'll do snipping tool, and we're just going to say new, and we'll get a snip of our column here inside of Substance Painter, and we're going to turn that in. And then we're also going to turn in our different textures, right? All of these. And this will all be shown to you as well inside of Google Classroom. All right, but that's how we're going to go through, and we're going to texture map our columns. Oh, and one other thing I did mention in class, if you can go into Substance Share and download additional materials and smart materials. If you do, you could place them in here, and you could utilize one of those as well.